Donald Trump is talking about housing. So he's put out a couple of tweets, or I don't know what we're calling them these days, but he's talking about wanting to make some changes to housing. Now, there's been two posts that I've seen. One talking about institutional buyers, and the second one talking about Fannie Mae and loans and how mortgages work in the U.S. So let's take them down topic by topic. The first post that he made was about stopping institutional investors like these big hedge funds from buying single family homes. Because if a bunch of investors like that are buying single family homes, it's driving the prices up. And most of the time, they're buying homes in lower price points where, first time home buyers and the most challenged buyers are trying to get into the market. Now, here's the problem that I have with that idea. The biggest problem is that there's not that many institutional home buyers buying homes right now. It doesn't make up a significant percentage of home buyers right now. They were buying a lot more pre-pandemic, rates were lower, but now prices are up, interest rates are up. Single family housing is not a great investment for an institutional buyer. And so when you want to attack, like, it sounds good to go after institutional investors, like nobody likes them, right? And so it sounds good to say, hey, we're going to stop them from buying houses, but it doesn't really solve the problem for everyday buyers. Now, if you were going to look at this issue, you could say, if you want to go after institutional investors, the way to go is to try to get them or force them to sell some of their inventory. Now, I think nationally, macro, people think these hedge funds and everything own more single family rental homes than they do. But in certain markets like Jacksonville, Florida, and Atlanta, like, there are certain markets where institutional investors have bought up a ton of single family homes. And if we got them to put those homes on the market, we incentivize to sell those homes, then supply would go up. And if supply goes up enough to meet demand or exceed demand, then we see prices come down. And so if Donald and the crew there, which, look, this is the first video I'm putting up on this channel, so you don't know me yet, but I'm not very political. Like, I try to look at politicians and stuff they say individually. So I try not to take my thoughts on what Trump's doing, whether I agree with him or don't in these other things, when I look at what he's saying about housing. So I'm not political. I try to just look at what people are doing and what they're saying. But if I look at what he's saying, he's trying to address the supply issue, which is the problem. Like, when you look at why the market is the way it is, it's simply because we don't have enough houses. Things are more basic than I think people make them out to be. We don't have enough houses. We have more people that want to buy a house than we do houses. Prices stay high. And so if you've gotten some of these institutional investors to look at selling these houses, then you'd get more supply, and maybe it would exceed demand. Maybe price would come down. How do you do that? I mean, there's a couple different things you could do. You could force them to, which wouldn't go well and would be tough to do. Like, we have property rights, right? We're America, we're freedom. We can't just tell people what to do. But maybe you could put a 5-year time frame on saying, hey, you have to sell your single family inventory in 5 years or 10 years. And maybe we can incentivize with a break on capital gains, maybe a reduction in the capital gains tax, because a lot of people own investment properties. And this goes for a larger portion of rental properties that are owned where there's a ton of equity in them. And so there's a lot of mom and pop investors that own a couple houses, 5, 10 houses, or 3 houses. And maybe they would sell them because they have a lot of equity in them, but they know if they do, they're just going to get hammered with capital gains tax. And so it doesn't really make sense for them. But if we reduce capital gains tax for a certain amount of time, or we eliminated it for a certain amount of time, we may see a lot of these investors putting their homes on the market. The other thing I like about what he's saying is he's focusing on single family rental homes, which is what these institutional investors own, which is what a lot of mom and pop investors own. And single family rental homes tend to be that affordable housing stock that we need more of. And so if we could get more single family investors to sell some of these properties, it would bring inventory to the market where we need it, which is that first time home buyer market. See, builders right now aren't building entry level homes. And so the way supply and demand works there is like you got to have a bunch of builders building luxury homes. Now, the current luxury home goes down in value, and then the next tier of house goes down in value because there's more supply at the top. But that takes a long time to trickle down to making those entry level homes more affordable. And so, if we're not building any more entry level homes, then do we need to get investors to start selling single family homes? The other piece that he was talking about was mortgages and buying mortgages, and all that to say he wants to make some moves to try to lower interest rates because interest rates are high, prices are high, and interest rates are making homes unaffordable. Along with other things, there's interest rates that are high, there's property insurance that is super high in a lot of markets that we don't really talk about, and as property values go up, property taxes go up. And so your interest rate, your value, your insurance, your taxes, everything is up, right? And it's like that I forget who the politician was. It was like rent is too high. It's like everything is too high. So if we can pull interest rates down, that is a piece that can make homes more affordable. But again, it doesn't address the supply side. How do we get more homes? And so if we just lower interest rates, you're just going to have people that can, a payment on a $500,000 house is now lower. More people can afford a $500,000 payment. But sometimes what happens with interest rates, like what happened previously, is when more people can afford a $500,000 house, prices go up. And so lowering interest rates, although will lower monthly payments, and I think it would be great. It would be great to see interest payments lowered, but it could also drive prices up. And unless we bring more supply to the market, we bring more houses to the market, we fix that supply issue, we get more people building single family homes. Unless we increase supply while we lower interest rates, values will probably go up. So if we want to keep values the same and make it more affordable by lowering interest rates, we have to have an increase in supply. So if we did something like incentivizing single family investors to sell homes, that could help increase supply. If we figured out something with incentivizing builders to build more affordable homes, that could help supply. But nothing else really works until we help increase supply. Like that is the biggest problem. We've got an interest rate problem, we've got this problem and that problem, and it's just a lesser problem. Like forget all that. The biggest problem we have in the housing market right now is we don't have enough houses. If you could start to solve that problem, then a lot of this stuff gets easier. So that's my take. Look, first video, just want to put something out because it was something going on, but I'm going to be talking a lot more about buying a home. I've helped hundreds of people navigate the home buying process. I've bought homes. I've been through it all. And I help, thousands of people a month through our brokerage sell homes every single month. And it's a crazy world out there. Like I empathize with people that are trying to buy a home right now because it's not easy. It is the toughest time that I've seen. And historically, if I go back and look at the data, it's one of the toughest times in history to buy a house for first-time home buyers. And so the more you know, like the better you can play the game. Because although it's the hardest time to buy a house, it's the hardest time to play the game, doesn't mean you shouldn't be in the game. And so, yeah, look, if you seem like you kind of maybe like me and want to hear our next video, then subscribe. And hopefully my next video will be interesting too. Thanks for jumping on.